in the dying embers of human existence, as the asteroid, a behemoth the size of Texas, hurtles relentlessly toward Earth. The world braces for an apocalyptic end. Deep beneath the bunker, a refuge plunges into the bowels of the Earth. Here the chosen gather, their purpose clear, to preserve the very soul of our civilization. The 35 and 70 millimeter prints that encapsulate the magic, the emotion, and the dreams of generations past. These masterpieces, each frame a testament to the human spirit, are carefully cataloged and cradled in the cavernous confines of the bunker. Perhaps there was room for more, for friends and family yearning for salvation, but sacrifices must be made. The movie nerds stand united, the keepers of a flame, promising a future where the art of storytelling endures, transcending the boundaries of time and space. God help us all.
Welcome to Back to the Framerate, part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. Join us as we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms, deliberating on whether each one is worthy of salvation or destined for destruction in the face of the impending asteroid apocalypse. You can find more episodes of this podcast on backtotheframerate.com, where you can subscribe and share our show and find us on our socials at Back to the Framerate. I'm Nathan Shore, and accompanying me is my compadre, my friend, my movie maven, Sam Cole.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
Wonderful having you. You and me are a duo tonight. I couldn't find the word.
A duel, yes. If it was dual, that does not apply, because I would not be the car, you would not be the truck, because we're not dueling. But I interesting though,
yeah. Yes, Brianna is taking a week off, and I'm sure she'll be back with us soon. But we have, I feel like, Sam, this week's episode feels like something we were destined to talk about. I feel like we have been circling this movie for a year and a half, teasing this, because I know this is a movie that we both reference and love. It's something that I think is part of our DNA. And we've will we ever talk about the great outdoors? And finally, the day is here.
The day is here. The film is nostalgic. We have been circling it. The great outdoors, the film has been smiling at us and waiting patiently because it knew we were coming. It was just like, well, this is inevitable. So, yeah, definitely.
So, well, you know what? I think we'll do something a little bit different on this episode, because typically we have a format going into this, and I will do the plot synopsis, but we'll have a little different approach to this, because I want to get a little bit about how you were introduced to this movie and all that. But let me just read a plot synopsis from the movie. It's vacation time for outdoorsy Chicago man Chet Ripley and his wife Connie and their two kids, Buck and Ben. The serene weekend of fishing at a Wisconsin lakeside cabin is disrupted by Connie's obnoxious brother-in-law, Roman Craig, along with his wife, Kate, and their two daughters. As the excursion progresses, the Ripley family finds themselves at odds with the stuffy Craig family, leading to a series of hilarious and chaotic misadventures. And, of course, I have a clip from the trailer.
This is Chet.
You remember me, Chet Ripley?
How you doing? This is his family.
You can run around here naked as a bear and not worry about running into anybody.
This is Roman.
What a gas.
This is his family.
I'm waiting for the heads to rotate around and vomit pea soup.
They're about to spend 1 week together in the great outdoors.
We weren't invited.
They'll be tickled to death to see us.
Who invited him anyway?
But this is no holiday.
The man is an ass.
This is war.
There you have it. So let me just, we'll get into movie facts and all that in a moment. But Sam, I just want to ask you, how old were you when you saw this in the theater? Yes, or what was your
I
introduction to
so
this movie?
I did not see this in the theater. This came out in the summer of 1988.
Mhm.
I was 7, and I was
Okay.
seeing like Roger Rabbit that summer like a million
Yep.
times. I was obsessed with that movie. That was Roger Rabbit. And so I actually honestly don't know. I think I saw this movie later and like bumped into it on television, like TBS, maybe even as late as my like early 20s or like
Oh,
late
really?
teens. But yeah, so I
Wow.
saw it, but like I was not a part of it when it was like alive and around in the summer of 1988. Um, did you see it in the theater?
Oh, yes. This
Oh,
this
that's awesome.
movie is my 80s DNA. This is one of those fortifying movies of the 80s for me. So,
Yes, it is.
yes,
It's so 80s. Yeah.
my father took me to see this. So, this was a bonding experience with my dad. And when you think about what the message of this movie is and the subject matter, it is it's a movie that not only I find extremely funny, but it also touches me as well because it it's very not just nostalgic for my childhood, but it just reminds me of just being a young my youth. It I have just a deep connection with it. It's hard to explain, but I will get into the probably more of those reasons in my review of why I think this movie is so great. Because a lot of people look at this movie and I think they see it as just, you know, silly 80s comedy that's very forgettable. And I understand that opinion. But I think this movie is elevated beyond that. But we'll get to that more. But I was there on probably the first week or two to see this. I was a huge John Candy fan, Dan Aykroyd fan in the 80s. I was there for Ghostbusters and all those movies, even
Oh
like
yeah.
some that even weren't that good. Like, but this, I think this is definitely in the upper echelon of those 80s comedies. But yeah.
I no, I agree, and I mean, I saw it later, but I just like instantly found it hilarious. I understand too people's view of it being like more of a middling '80s comedy, but and we'll get to that. But like, I I must say that I'll say really quick. For me, Dan Aykroyd in this movie is hilarious, like unbelievably. His obnoxious character, his facial expressions, the way he delivers his lines, like I mean, I love everyone. I love John Candy. Dan Aykroyd definitely adds to this movie for me.
So yeah, so this came out. Let's get to some of the movie facts here because I know this came out June 17th, 1988. But what else
Indeed.
can you tell us about this?
So, The Great Outdoors is a 1988 American comedy film directed by Howard Dutch, and it was written and produced by John Hughes, actually, starring Dan Aykroyd and John Candy, of course, with supporting roles done by Stephanie Faracy and Annette Bening in her film debut, which is
Yeah.
amazing because, like, Annette Bening is, Hughes, and so also starring Chris Young, Lucy Deakins, and Robert Prosky.
Robert Prosky, he is like
yeah.
one of those amazing character actors that pops up in so many things. And I forgot he plays the co-owner of the resort. And I love him every time he's in this. But yeah, but continue. Yeah, I love
So
him.
he's the co-owner. So he's not the guy that got struck by lightning. He's the guy that
No.
like co-owns the resort with his wife,
Yes.
and they
Yeah.
like have a couple of those scenes where they're like, very
I
grisly
think
kind of.
it's
Yeah.
Zoan Leroy plays his wife Juanita, also is the other co-owner. And I think they're wonderful. Those two in this. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so
Britt Leach plays Reg, is the
that's
person
right.
that's been struck by lightning 66 times. Six, 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 six.
So this, by comparison, this is mega budgeted compared to Ernest Goes to Camp, which we reviewed last week. Ernest Goes to Camp cost $3.4 million. This cost $24 million and made $43.5 million in the U.S. So box office definitely solid. And music by Thomas Newman. Oh, and the filming, interesting.
That's
The
Randy
filming,
Newman's brother, I think.
yes, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this film was shot on location in a place called Bass Lake, California. It's a small resort town near the Sierra National Forest. They shot in 3 weeks of October 87, where it was portrayed as the fictional Lake Potawatomi or Minimac. Also, Ducey's Bass Lake Lodge, a rustic 1940s resort, was featured as Wally and Juanita's Perks Pine Lodge Resort. The Loon's Nest vacation cabin, built on the back lot at Universal Studios, was designed to match the style of Ducey's existing cabins. Film was shot under the title of Big Country. In terms of like reception, Rotten Tomatoes, it holds about like a 40% from critics, so like not the most positively reviewed film. But like I think the audience likes it a bit more. And yeah, so that's sort of a general. There's some more data, but that's kind of an overview.
So you want to hear movie connection? I think you will appreciate, Sam, about where this movie was shot. It was shot. What was it? Bass Lake.
Yep, Bass Lake, California. Yeah.
So another movie was filmed the scene here. Do you remember in Star Trek V, in the beginning of it, where they're camping out with Bones and Captain Kirk? Shot also at this lake.
Oh, nice.
The beginning of Star Trek V.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I read that. So yeah, there's a
I do like that connection.
Yeah. Not the best Star Trek, but a cool time.
No, certainly not. But yeah, it has some moments, but not a great film.
I love doing this because I like to seeing what was the top 10 of the box office at the time.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes. Number 1 in its first week of release, also came out the same time as The Great Outdoors, was Red Heat. Remember Red Heat?
No way. Yes, I do.
Was, Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Belushi.
Yes.
Debuted with 8.1 million. Number 2 in its third week was Big.
Big, yes.
With 6.6 million. And The Great Outdoors debuted at number 3 with 6.1 million. Number 4 in its fourth week of release with 6.1 million was Crocodile Dundee 2.
Oh, wow. That's right, 1988.
Yeah. Number 5 in its second week of release was Big Business with 5 million. That was the I think the Bette Midler comedy where she plays like there's like a twin of herself or something like that. I vaguely remember this film. I actually saw it in the theater, but I almost forgot everything about it.
Interesting. I was just confusing that with another like 80s business movie with Michael J. Fox, but it must be a different
Secret
film.
of My Success, maybe?
I think that's it. Yeah, wrong film.
So number 6, this is interesting. I won't spend too much time on this, but number 6 also debuted this week, and it came in with 5 million, was Bull Durham. And I thought that movie was a big hit. And I didn't look at what the total box office was for, but I would have just assumed that Bull Durham like would have cleaned up. And I was surprised that it came in at number 6. Now I didn't check following weeks to see if that was maybe a limited first week or something, but I was just kind of surprised to see that only made 5 million. Number 7, I know, personal favorite, yours, Sam. In its fifth week of release, 2.9 million was Willow.
Oh, yes. Glorious Willow. We got to review that one day.
Number 8 in its third week of release with 2.8 million was Funny Farm, with the Chevy Chase comedy, which is honestly, there's a little bit of a tie-in in some ways to Great Outdoors, because I was going to mention this later. Chevy Chase was approached to be in this movie, I think, as the Dan Aykroyd character, as Roman.
Interesting.
And I actually think that could have worked, but he chose to do Funny Farm instead, which ironically is also about a city dweller that goes out to a remote location and has shenanigans as well. But I also think he chose to do that because The Great Outdoors is an extremely similar film to National Lampoon's Vacation. And I have a feeling that that's another reason why Chevy Chase says, you know what, it's very similar to another franchise I'm already doing, and he may have not wanted to have been associated with that. So it's possible.
And I can see that working, but personally, I'm glad it was Dan Aykroyd, because he just adds such a wacky, like, you know, I'm so used to him from Ghostbusters and other films where he's like more of a like protagonist, and so to see him with these kind of like yuppie antagonistic, like really aggressive, like I love it.
Yep. And number 9 in its fourth week of release with 2.7 million, Rambo 2.
Woohoo. I mean,
And
It's got to be Rambo
Rambo
3.
3. Rambo, sorry,
Yeah.
Rambo 3. Sorry, Rambo 3. And finally, number 10 in the second week, 2.7 million, The Presidio, the Sean Connery military drama, I believe.
Oh wow,
So, yeah,
I have not seen that film.
I haven't seen it either. So it's been something I've always thought about checking up. I haven't. My one takeaway is I look at this list. You know what? The box office back then, just so many comedies, and we don't get the comedies in the way that we used to. Yeah,
No, we do not have a lot of those. Yeah,
yeah,
and I love, like, even in the late '90s, there was, like
yeah,
Austin Powers and a lot of those comedies. Like,
yeah.
I hear that.
So that's my addition to that. So, anyways,
That's
all right. So I guess at this point we should. Let me just look at my agenda. I think we should probably get to our thoughts on this. Who how should we do this? We did not do our random number thing. You
oh
want me to go
man,
first? Do you want me to
sure,
go?
yeah. If
Okay.
you want to go, yeah, and I'll go. We'll dialogue.
Okay. All right. All right. So I already mentioned this before, but I saw this movie in the theater in the summer of 1988 with my dad, and like I said, it was one of those formative experiences for me where I bonded with my dad over this movie, and some of that maybe because of the relationship that I had with my dad. I saw those parallels with the John Candy character in the film, not so much in their personalities, but for I guess whatever reason, it's hard to pinpoint it exactly. The way this movie captures, and it's hard to pinpoint it in the feeling, but an emotion of what it was like for me growing up in the '80s and taking family vacations. What makes it more emotional is what it was like. I guess it's just what it was like. Yeah, what it was like taking family vacations in the '80s. What makes this more appealing to me versus like National Lampoon's Vacation, which I will say I like National Lampoon's Vacation more. I think it's a funnier movie, beat by beat.
Yeah, that
But
movie. Yeah, it's more
but
iconic. Yeah,
if you will compare them, because I think there's a lot that compares. Both written by John. Well, both John Hughes wrote the original script for Vacation, and he kind of pirated his own material for this movie. But Vacation is, it's a much more cynical film, I would say. But The Great Outdoors has a huge heart. In the Vacation films, some are much funnier than others. But like I said, it's rooted in cynicism. In The Great Outdoors is just more realistic portrayal of what vacations are like for me growing up. And
definitely understand that.
of
Yeah,
course, there are some outlandish things that happen in this film, but at its core, it's a movie that represents all the family vacations that I went on with my family that didn't quite live up to the brochure. But looking back at those times now, I would give anything to relive those summer days with my parents. And I miss so much my parents taking me on vacation. And I went to some obscure places like this. We went up to cabins up in Prince Edward Island and upstate New York.
oh nice.
And I'm doing everything I can to give those experiences to my two girls right now, because I know they may not appreciate it to its fullest right now, but someday they will look back at these trips and be in my shoes I am right now and remember fondly of when they were kids and everything we did to create these memorable experiences for them growing up. So this is kind of a sidebar, but my experience, my advice for parents out there is, create those experiences for your kids. And I know, times can be tough and not everyone has the ability to take, extensive vacations, but plan trips to the beach or the park or day trips. Those memories for your kids will have, you know, those memories your kids will have, for are just so important. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little choked up because I lost my mom a couple of years ago, and she was like the catalyst for us taking vacations, and we didn't take a family vacation after 1998 until a year ago. My dad and my brother and sister. So it was really hard, you know, you know, after that. So anyways, but back to the movie, I want to get back on track here, but it's hard to look at this with a critical eye because like I said, the DNA of this movie is part of who I am. But I will say this movie is not without some flaws. From an outside perspective, this film honestly is really nothing more than a series of gags. If
Right.
you are not into that, then maybe don't even attempt it. But I'd say a majority of the gags I think do hold up, which actually surprised me. I hadn't watched this movie probably in 20 years. What I forgot though was just how funny the dialogue was in this. I remember the gags. I remember the water skiing. I remember the
Yeah.
stuff with the bear. I remember the 96er and all of these things.
I will comment briefly that all the gags have a decent production value to them. Like they go for the gag. Like the gag like breathe. Each one breathes. Like they go for it. Yeah.
But some of the exchanges, the dialogue that take place are just downright gut busting. And I forgot how well it's a John Hughes pen script. He was the Shakespeare of the 80s, honestly. And I have some sound clips I will play in a little bit. Of course, like I said, this is John Hughes script, and he's right off the heels of Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He was in the zone at this time. But before I wrap this up, finally, I'll just want to say that I thought the pairing of Candy and Aykroyd are just dynamic. And I can't believe this is really the only time they co-starred together. They've been in the same movie several times, but they are so good. I think this movie is elevated by their performances. For you mentioned Aykroyd before. I think Candy is the heart of this film. What I love and respect about this film so much is that Candy, a large man, is never once the butt of a fat joke in this film. And I think that's so cool. He's playing a husband and a dad who just loves his family. This character of Chet could have been played by any actor. I mean, I love that's Candy, but it has nothing to do with him being overweight.
That's really good point. Yeah.
And this is the 1980s where poking fun at someone's weight is about the easiest thing to do in comedy. But this movie is better than that. And I have all the respect in the world for this film because of it. So my final rating for this is still 3.5 because there are plenty of dated things in this. I love this movie, but I do understand that there is a lot in here that is kind of like, ugh, like don't get me started on the raccoons. All right, but I almost captured that soundbite, but there you have it. So to you, Sam.
I will say for the record, I think the raccoons are like the dumbest. It is so aggressively dumb, and it keeps cutting back to them often that I can't help but actually chuckle because it's so stupid that I almost like laugh out of like amused like annoyance, but I'm like, it's them again. Yeah.
Every time the raccoon, I honestly, I kid you not, every time the raccoons came up, I just picked up my phone, like I waited for the music to end, and like I'm checking my Facebook or something during the raccoons. I just could not take it.
Yeah, and then it's all their quotes are like all their dialogue is written in capitalization, and it's like why give them personalities? Why? Like
I don't know.
it's just like who thought that was funny?
I'm just assuming they need to get this to the 90-minute mark is what I'm assuming.
Yeah. And so, it's funny, but for some reason, of all the reasons, that actually sounds genuinely like a possibility. Like, just cut to them again. we need 5 more minutes on this picture.
Yeah.
No, I will say that is awesome that you have that like emotional connection to the film. I also like the theme of like a father trying to create an experience for his kid that he had when he was growing up. It's like the passing of like a family baton. From like fathers to sons, like just parents to children. So I like the theme of that. I had really good like experiences. It's funny, my dad was less into camping, but we went on road trips a lot together, and so that was more. Now I'm like I love road trips, and so that's where I sort of got that. But for me, judging the movie, I enjoy this movie. I find it amusing and funny, and that was a really good point, Nathan. It does have a good heart. Like, it's crass. And I think Vacation is a better film too, but Vacation is really crass. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a totally different, like,
Oh,
you
when they
know,
get off the highway in St. Louis, right there alone,
yeah, it's like, it's a different beast altogether. I enjoy this film. I do see, I can see the point of negative reviews where I do think it is a more kind of middling 80s comedy, but I enjoy it because for me, I find it pleasant and I find it amusing. And I like the dialogue. I like the banter. I think, John Candy's a good character. And I think that Dan Aykroyd is just hilariously over the top in this movie. From everything from his when Dan Aykroyd like sees John Candy and his wife and they're like making out in the living room and they think they're alone and Dan Aykroyd comes in and the look on his face, he's like he's like a happy like kid. That just
Oh, brings out the camcorder and starts filming them when they're
yeah, when he's just like
trying to get around.
it just that sets the tone. And I love how annoying he is and like how John Candy like just can't stand him and is like holding it back. So there's that great dynamic of being stuck with like a family guest that you don't want to be there. What I really like about this movie is John Candy's son, his like brief relationship with the girl from the town. I love that because for some reason, like, that was an opportunity for like, you talk how they like avoid like fat jokes, but they could have made his son like a jerk or gone for more like crude teen sex comedy or something like that. And like they have good, like funny moments, but I just find their like brief relationship, like realistic and interesting and quintessential 80s. Like there is literally a shot at the 45-minute mark. It's right after like John Candy like fell off his horse and they're like, "Hey, where you been?" And he's like, I gotta go home. I gotta go home. It then cuts to a fair at night with like an 80s song and then on a long shot with like a thin depth of field where it's like there's a sun and then the girl comes around and they're like having their moment at the fair and it's like quintessential 80s perfect. Like I just love the way that moment is directed, and I know I'm like overthinking it, but
Can I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
So I was of two minds of that. This time around, when I was observing this romance, I was actually kind of bored by it. I want to like get back to the A plot.
Right.
This is
a B plot. It's totally a B plot.
I will say, back when I was a young teenager, I adored this part of the movie because it was my fantasy to have a summer romance like this.
Exactly. That's the thing. In seeing it again, it reminds me of my nostalgia for that time period.
Yes.
And it does it so well. And they could not get better. Like they've got the fair at night. Then when he's like saying goodbye to her later, they're like dramatically lit on this dock. Like they've got the like romantic cinematography out in spades, and I totally am a sucker for it. I'm like,
I know.
Oh, the 80s.
Campy is like still cute. She's smart. She's independent, and she's feisty.
Yes.
She is perfect girlfriend material for 14-year-old Nathan back in the day.
Right.
And because I'm an old curmudgeon who doesn't believe in love anymore, I just kidding. It's fine. It's totally fine.
A cold heart. No, just
go ahead.
No, but yeah. So I love that scene, and so the thing about this movie is like some of the gags are fine, some of them fall flat. I was amazed that I've seen this movie over the years on TV where there's like commercial interruptions, so there's a lot of scenes that are spread out. Seeing it all as a one piece of movie, I was amazed how quickly it went by. Like it's 90 minutes. It's like a breezy, like I almost enjoyed the situation I could have done with the movie being like 15 minutes longer. I will say on an amusing level, this is a joke I've always had about the movie. I'm poking at good fun, but the name of this film is called The Great Outdoors. And like 60% of the screen time is spent in like bars and restaurants and it's like they don't even spend the night like camping in tents in this movie. Like you'd think it'd be the perfect opportunity in a movie titled The Great Outdoors. But what I also like about it is it's so grounded in like kind of a realistic family vacation like that. That's the type of thing that would happen. So I enjoy the movie. I don't think it's amazing, but I find it pleasant. I enjoy it. I find it amusing. If it's on TV, I'll always watch it. It's just, it's enjoyable. Oh, and one quick fact before I give the review, the stars, but the original ending in John Hughes' original script, the daughters of Roman were supposed to get like hooked by a giant fish out in the lake, and that was going to be the climax. And they built a fish, but they changed it to a bear, and they actually used Bart the bear, which was like the Hollywood well-trained bear that was also in the movie The Edge with Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins. Same grizzly, but. I think I'm glad they went with the bear. I think
the bear was one of the most prolific actors of the 90s. Actually, he did The Bear, White Fang, Homeward Bound,
yes,
on Deadly Ground, Legend of the Fall,
Legend of the
Monkeys,
Fall,
and The Edge. He had a bigger career than most A-list actors in the 90s.
Yeah, he was a big successful bear.
Yeah,
Bart the bear.
Yeah.
I will end by saying, so. I mean, I definitely have more thoughts on the movie, but I will say that I would give it a solid, strong 3 stars.
Okay. Great. Let's get into some of the scenes here, some of our favorite moments of this, because there's so much. One of my observations of this right in the very beginning, and I picked up on this on the rewatch, there are so many references to The Shining in this. And of course there is the twins, which is obvious.
Right.
And they actually mentioned that. But did you get a sense of the opening as a reference to The Shining? You know how when Jack Nicholson and his family are driving to the Overlook Hotel, I got that vibe immediately with Chet and his family, and they're singing like yakety yak, but there's all these overhead scenes of the car. I call it like the family truckster, but they're driving out to the country. That opening sequence, I feel like, is a direct riff on the opening title sequence of The Shining. Both films involve families driving out to rural settings where shenanigans, shall we say, will take place. There are several other parallels weave throughout, but it kept running through my mind the whole time while watching this, which I got, a lot of enjoyment out of catching those. So.
That's true. No, I can definitely see that. Like it's, that I'm sure that was on purpose or thematically, like they're going to like this hellish, crappy lodge, Yeah.
And immediately I am completely in the zone when Chet and his family walk into the lodge, and the very first gag, the very first joke is, "For prompt service, blow me." And my 13-year-old immature child took over my brain's control, but couldn't help but laugh. What's funny is while I was watching the film in my bedroom, my wife came into the room and started getting ready for bed when that joke came on, and I blurted out with a laugh, and she just looked at me, and I felt shame.
Shame, a look of shame, indeed. Yeah. Yes. Perfect timing too, right?
So there's another scene. I'm just going to go through some of the things. One of my favorite scenes, and I do have a soundbite for this. Chet and Roman, very different characters, but there is one of my favorite scenes. Like I said before, I think the dialogue, is the strength of this movie for me. Yes, the gags, some of them hold up well. Some of them I think go on way too long, but they start talking about, hey, what do you like about being out in the country here? What's so great about this place? And Roman has this incredible vision of this industrial complex, and Chet has a response to this. And I actually have the soundbite, which is one of my favorite moments of the whole movie. And it's right here.
I'll tell you what I see when I look out there, if you want to know.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I see the underdeveloped resources of northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I see a syndicated development consortium exploiting over $1.5 billion in forest products. I see a paper mill, and if the strategic metals are there, a mining operation. A greenbelt between the condos on the lake and a waste management facility, focusing on the newest rage in toxic waste, medical refuse. Infected bandages, body parts, IV tubing, contaminated glassware, entrails, syringes, fluid, blood, low-grade radioactive waste, all safely contained, sunken in the lake, and sealed for centuries. Now, I ask you, what do you see?
I just see trees.
That is just incredible writing.
That is great. It's a great, the comedic timing. John
Great
Candy's
timing,
hilarious.
yeah.
Just the delivery.
I got a couple other things.
I do love the scene. I mean, it reminds me of, it's like a slightly more tame version from Vacation, but when they go to, like, yet again, a bar/restaurant, and it's like the guy's 102nd birthday, and they're getting photos with him, and he's dead.
Yes.
And they're just completely grossed out. And it's like that 80s, make fun of dead people humor.
That is totally like a scene that feels ripped out of like a vacation film. The scene where, was he 109 or something?
109, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that felt like Clark Griswold and his family, like getting a little closer to them kids. That felt like it could have been a scene ripped right out of that movie.
Right. Then they're like on him in the picture, and like they're like, he's been, he died in the car, and John Candy is like, oh, kids, go wash your hands.
Yeah. What else I have here? There were raccoon bits I could do without. We talked about that. Ba 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 boom. Hated that.
That happens way too often.
So Dan Aykroyd, did you pick up on his Canadian accent slipping through a lot?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
How are you? Yeah. It was coming through a lot in this movie. It was like I started keeping a little checklist of every time I heard the Canadian in him come out.
That was definitely there, and like, but he's got so many like crazy, like, like here's a line, and it's like Chet. It's like, he's the oldest man in Canada, kids. Isn't that something? Well, personally, I'd rather see a 46-inch bust singing "Burnin' Love."
Yeah,
it's just the dialogue is like very punchy in the movie, and it's crass, but it's hilarious. It's the delivery too, the way because they're such good actors. Like, if this was poorly cast, a lot of these lines would fall flat,
So I want to bring up one other great bit of dialogue and delivery from Dan Aykroyd, which is maybe my second favorite part of the film, where this is after Chet tells the bear story, which I actually do have a comment on as well, because he's talking. All of a sudden, it's actually kind of a weird moment where Chet like dims the lights, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I'm just going to tell the story about a bear, which is it's just an odd.
It's strange because it's like it's a very tonal. It's like a tonal shift, and he's like, "Well, I'm just going to do this now," and he's like, "It's storytelling time."
Yeah,
I just like it. He takes it very seriously.
And at the conclusion, does he like pour like freaking like gasoline on the fireplace? I don't know what he does, but he blows up the cabin almost. Like
that's the scene. That's where I love it for some reason, and I don't know why. It's not even the funniest line, but I always crack up at that moment when he like lights the gasoline on fire or whatever it is, and like Dan Aykroyd is like, for Christ's sake, Chet, I'm half drunk here. And he's like, he's visibly freaked out.
Yeah. So Dan Aykroyd, Roman, goes in to console his twin daughters, and what is one of my favorite moments in movie history. And this is it.
Good evening. How's it going? Listen, girls, as your father, I feel it incumbent upon me to set the record straight on the validity of the tale which Uncle Chet shared with us this evening. I know that a terrifying story like that coming from the mouth of a recognized authority figure could be traumatizing for kids like yourselves. I know that because I had a similar experience with my Uncle Roy in a story he used to tell about a family that went into the woods and was attacked by a band of escaped Army psychiatric patients who'd been subjected to violent, hellish, torturous behavior modification experiments. Seems they escaped from the metal boxes the Army kept them in, found this family in the woods, fell upon them, slaughtered them, and ate them. Well, now that story, it gave me nightmares not to be believed, so I don't want Uncle Chet's bear story to upset you in the same way. So I'm here to say that there actually is no bear, and that all of what Uncle Chet was saying was just a yarn, spinning for our entertainment, and even if there were a bear out there, I'm in the house to protect you. So, no more thinking about bears. All right? No more thinking about unpleasant things. We're going to close our eyes and dream about nice things. About cuddly, soft, fluffy things.
Fluffy things. Oh my God. It's so Canadian. Everything he's saying also in that too.
No, exactly. It's
Yeah,
just,
I love that.
delivery is hilarious.
And ever since I heard that, I've been like telling my daughter, like just my youngest daughter, like go to sleep. Just think of cuddly, fluffy things. Just go to bed. I've been using that line all week.
Did she say anything? Was she like, "Oh, thanks, Dad," or what?
Thanks, Dad. Like what? Oh man. What else here? So I want to talk about the water skiing scene for a moment. This is like again, kudos to the stuntman number one who's doing all this because he deserves some Academy Award for stunt work also. But
Yeah.
this I do feel like this goes on a really long time. Also, again, if they trim the fat in this movie, it'd probably be a 70-minute film because this did not need to be this long. I personally
it just goes on like it's like a big. It's sort of funny, and then it also feels like they're attempting to do like a legitimate like set piece. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like it's a weird mix for me.
Although I do like the back of the boat that says, I think it says like "Eat my wake."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does go on long though. There's a lot of shots, you know.
Well, they figured, hey, we got a lake, we got to like show it. That's obviously what
they did pretty good though. I mean, I watching it on like Blu-ray, and the image, like you can't see the stunt, like I was looking for the shot where it's like an obvious stuntman, and like obviously it's not John Candy, but like they cover it pretty well.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. The guy did a great job.
They did. Yeah.
All right, well, what else we got here? There was, of course, this is the 80s, so there has to be a little bit of a montage, and there is kind of like a mini one. Again, feels kind of like filler again, and there's this bit where John Candy is like riding go-karts, Dan Aykroyd is at a driving range, and it ends with John Candy hit with a golf ball. It's just more 80s slapstick that, it just tracks for what time period was. This is stupid. The stuff like this doesn't really happen unless it's Caddyshack or things like that. I guess that just makes sense. Doesn't further the plot one bit, but again, more stuff that get the runtime over 90 minutes. I feel
that's the thing. Like I actually, this is not a complaint, just an observation. You were saying that the script, this movie feels like a series of bits. It's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and it's not bad. It's just more kind of like, here's their extended, weekend.
That's the major complaints of this is that I love this film, but like it is pure nostalgia because something like this, when I look at it from, a 5 mile view, like this scene right here is just ridiculous and stupid because it clearly is something that was an afterthought. Because at the end of this, John Candy gets hit in the face with a golf ball. There's no bruise. There's no ramifications. He doesn't get angry with Roman afterwards. It is just purely like, hey, let's throw him on a go-kart. Let's put Roman on a driving range. Let's just fill up some time. And I feel like there's a lot of that in here. And if you strip down this movie to its core story, it's almost nothing. So this is you have to really be prepared for that going into this.
Exactly. And see, but that's where I'm agree with you. I enjoy it, but I'm also in the nostalgia camp. I like the 80s vibe. So it's like those criticisms I definitely agree with. Like it is thin, but yet it's still it's fun. Like I enjoyed myself watching this movie. Like it was fun to do. It was fun to watch
because we've got great talent, great writing, and everyone's committed. So that's why it ultimately does come out on the other end of good, I guess you could say. We get to a scene that I think is short, but it is one of the most iconic moments in the movie where they go to a bar and they meet Reg, a guy who's been struck by lightning not 6, but 66 times. This scene is precious to me. There's a moment where I think it's the owner. Is it the bar? Is there a different bartender, or is it all the owner Wally?
I
That
think it's all the owner Wally. I think, but I'd have to go back and.
but he says, I lost my place here. He says, you never met a guy that's more tuned into the barometric pressure than Reggie. And for the most part, I love the scene for Reggie's delivery of his line, which I have here.
He's been struck by lightning. How many times is it now, Reg?
6 times. 66 times.
It's never not funny. Sam, I rewound that scene like 3 times. Just the way he goes, and then the way he like lives the head, like in the head. No, it's not just the head, in the head. You know, and it's like it is. I think it's one of the greatest like acting performances from a character actor like in the 80s ever. You know, the way he delivers that. I don't know.
He does. He did. The delivery's hilarious. It is a laugh out loud. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you think he's going to say like 6, 7, but he's like 66 times, and it's like.
What else here? There is a scene where the bat is flying around in the cabin. Again, another one I like overstays its welcome a little bit. Best part of this scene for me is at the very end of it, though. After the bat has been like knocked out, and Roman gives it a final whack, and the family just goes, you know. Is the only part that I really like about it is everyone's reaction when he hits it one last time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think the fight with the bat just goes on a little long, and it's just kind of like ha ha. But I do love the beginning where like John Candy walks in, sees the bat, walks right out, and he's like, "No, we're gonna need help. This sucker's huge." And I just love when Roman's like, "Wow." That's great.
What I love also, he walks out and he goes, "It buzzed me."
Right.
Now, here, let me ask you this, because there's a movie that sadly I have not seen, and I'm going to keep bringing up the Vacation franchise. I mentioned before that I feel that John Hughes likes to rip himself off. Now, I have not seen Christmas Vacation. However, I am aware of a scene in that involving a squirrel in Christmas Vacation. Does Christmas Vacation rip off the scene with a squirrel, the squirrel scene?
No, not quite. It's different, and it's a lot more like it's more shocking.
Okay.
But funny, yeah. Okay. Hilarious, actually. The climax of Vacation is like, of Christmas Vacation is like Home Alone-esque in its antics.
All right. Okay, I have a few other notes here before we take a break. So this is kind of a key thing here, because this is one of the we have to talk about one of the biggest, most iconic scenes in the movie, the old 96er.
Yes,
when most people, if I ever bring up the movie The Great Outdoors, what is the first thing anyone thinks of? It is this scene here. I actually today was talking to someone that works for the town government in Weston, and they said, hey, they just went up to New Hampshire, up to a cabin. I said, hey, I just watched The Great Outdoors. Did you have any experiences like that? No, actually, I did not eat the old 96er. They brought it up.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so funny. I was talking to a friend last night. He brought up the old 96er too. And for me, it's funny because you're right. That is iconic. To me, that's just like a funny, mildly amusing kind of filler scene. Like, what food joke can we do in a restaurant? But everyone, like, they remember that.
Yeah. My favorite thing in this whole thing is how we got the chef just plops down the steak,
Right.
and he's just covered in what I hope is beef blood, but you never know.
Right.
So 96 ounces of meat is equal to 6 pounds. Now I
Jesus.
go out, I'll order a porterhouse or a sirloin or a filet, and it's probably between at most 9 ounces. It's probably all I can do because steak is filling.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So
It really is.
I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not possible, right? Even not obviously not including the fat and grizzle. So
I think if not impossible, or if it is, like, serious health consequences, like, Jesus. Yeah, I don't know.
6 pounds, because 6 pounds of meat, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's. I mean, I probably meat, no, but I probably have eaten like 3 pounds of something at some point in my life and majorly regretted it.
I mean, yeah, actually, it was out at a restaurant last night, and I had like a 14-ounce like New York sirloin strip steak, and to me, that was huge. And like, I can't imagine, like, that's my like limit,
14 ounces.
Yeah.
So that's not even 1 pound.
Right. Exactly. I just I can't imagine it. Yeah. I think it's movie fiction, unless someone somewhere tried to like do that and probably got ill.
Oh man. So here's the thing that I do have a little bit of a gripe with. So when they get back to the cabin, there is a point where Chet, I feel like he suddenly turns on Roman, and it seems like is it out of left field? It's set up that he's frustrated with him and his family staying with them, and obviously he's annoyed with them. And over the course of the week, I've never really understood what was the final straw, his breaking point, that he felt like he needed to confront Roman, and he's so pissed off. I mean,
I honestly think that might be a weakness in the script or a moment, because like, I don't know if he had that final moment, and I think it's just sort of like the plot dictates, like, okay, you have to blow your top now so that we can get to this next scene and story point. Like, maybe not the script, but I don't, there is no specific like boiling point that I remember. It does seem like he just suddenly kind of loses it,
Yeah. And it absolutely is a weakness in this, that it just feels like it comes out of nowhere. I mean, obviously he's set up to be annoyed by him, but it just feels like it comes out of nowhere. And even, I don't know if I'm getting the order of events even more out of whack here, but then Chet, is this where Chet also asked him to invest in something?
Yeah, or no, right in the middle when they're arguing, that's when Roman is like, and to think I was going to offer you this such and such,
which obviously we learn is a lie, but it's like $25,000, which in 1998 is a lot of money. It's like just over $66,000 today. Chet seems like a smart guy, and it just seems so weird that he's so willing to, without a single question, with a guy that he already hates, and just write a check. Plus, Chet does a 180-degree turn on Roman after he says that he gives him the sob story, how he said something derogatory about him like years ago. Chet was furious towards Roman a moment ago, then the sudden change of heart. I find this part of the movie very poorly written and weak, and I don't know if there was something that got cut out of the script, or we just said, hey, we got to wrap this up. We're just doing a series. This is the story right here. And
it feels kind of forced, like they just kind of get through it. And it's too quick. That's why I think like the movie already has filler, but like I think it might have been more interesting if they'd had a blow up, like if they'd added a scene or a sequence where they like, go camping or something in a field near the house, and the blow up happens not in the comfort of the house, but like out in the elements. And it's like, then they're like, covered in mosquitoes, or I'm taking off, or I'm getting out of here. But it just feels a little bit forced.
Yeah.
And when I say longer, no way should this be a 2-hour movie because there's not enough material. But I'm saying if the film was 10 minutes longer, I think they could have added some more, just helped the climax a little bit.
See, I think that they could have taken out things and replaced. They could have weaved some story into these
weave
gags.
Something in place of the stupid raccoons and stuff. Yeah.
I think absolutely, because there's plenty of extended gags that they could have weaved in some dialogue about teasing like Roman's financial trouble or some other things showing this escalate. I feel like this film, I don't know if they shot this out of order or what they did. It just feels like we're just going to throw gags at the wall, see what's funny, and throw it in there. They had no idea what the story was going to be. And then all right, we got 10 minutes to tell a story at the end of this.
Right. And the payoff, the climax with the bear is cool, but it does feel, and I think it was thrown into the story kind of at the last minute. It just is and here's a set piece, which did not look cheap. They had a mine and the bear, and they had to coordinate that. And that was a whole sequence, and the rainstorm and everything. And so it just kind of tacked on. I feel that John Candy's bear story earlier, I kind of would have preferred it if they'd been camping or something and they see the bear from a distance and it doesn't attack them. And then he's like, oh my God, that's of the bear from blah, blah, blah. And he told the story because his story comes out of nowhere. But it's those things. It's just slightly missing pieces where stuff just seems tacked on, but the stuff that is there, I'm still entertained by. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So twins go running off because they're stupid, fall down the well. I don't mind at all the whole scene where Roman goes and saves them. That's fine. There's a gimmicky thing where Chet tries to save them, but they've already left the well. But I want to get back to when they all get back to the cabin and Candy was chased by a bear all the way back to the cabin. He's at the door. Bear barrels him down, tramples him through the cabin, knocks over the door. All right, jumping on him over the door. It drives me nuts that after the bear invades the cabin, John Candy takes the time to put the door back on the hinges. This is a nitpick. I know it's a nitpick, but what the hell? There is a grizzly bear in your cabin. Yeah, let's put the door back on the cabin so the bear can't leave.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was a dumb move.
Makes perfect sense. But it's all done so that the next gag can happen when more people can come trampling over Chet again with the door, knocking him over.
Right.
Not a funny bit. But anyways, the
bit, it's the bit that I don't like was when they shoot the bear in the ass. That's always kind of it's har, but it's a little, I don't know. I just feel like it's a little mean. I'm like, oh, the poor bear. It's just behaving in its nature, it's, and that's nitpicky. I'm not oh, I feel so sorry. Cause I know it's a gag. Obviously no animal is harmed. I just that is not, some people would find that hilarious. And for me, I'm just kind of
Well, I'm in your camp, Sam, because I never found the bear threatening because I know this is a trained bear.
Yeah.
And it's, it's
that whole scene, the scene where the bear comes in the house is amusing, but it's standing on the door. If it was real life, if that was real life and it was a grizzly attacking, it would run up those stairs so quickly and just claw everyone and run around. It would be a lot faster, and everything in that scene is orchestrated and everyone's taking their time, and there's close-ups on faces of great, hilarious, terrified expression from Dan Aykroyd, though. I love that moment.
Oh, he's like, oh.
That's just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bear's ass gets shot off, and I didn't really find it. Now he's the bald ass bear.
Yeah, and he's har. He's he's hurt and he's whimpering in the woods. Yeah. It's yay, terrible.
And it all ends fine because Chet's family's gonna move in with Roman's family's gonna move in with Chet's family. And I give that marriage a week.
I know.
Roman and his wife, right?
I mean, yeah, no. After all the experiences, they like turn around and it's like, oh man, yeah. She's gonna when
She's
she
all about the
finds out
money.
everything, and he's like, we're bankrupt and this and that. But
Annette Bening's character is all about the money.
Yeah,
she's
it's
like,
so funny to see Annette Bening in this film. You know what I mean? Because she's done so much that, like, it's funny to see her as this character. It's just different.
Yeah. So I don't have any other notes. I have gone through everything, but I will just say, this still, despite the I'd say the terrible final act of this movie, which I think just falls apart. This is still a funny movie. It warms my heart. It makes me feel good. The movie's got a good heart. John Candy was a treasure and such an incredible talent. It makes me sad that we lost him so early. Would have loved to have seen what he would have gone on to do.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. But yeah. So
no, I agree. I totally agree with everything we said. The plot and the structure, but like the movie does have a heart and soul, and like my nostalgia. It's hard. It's a hard movie to dislike for me. Like it's amusing and like fun.
Yeah. So all right. Okay.
Ba, 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 boom.
We needed that music for this. Yeah.
I bet 6-year-olds like that, or no, I mean 10-year-olds maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Somebody laughed.
Somebody laughed. You know what? Hey, it passed by. Hundreds and hundreds of people watched this movie before it was released. Like, yep, that's funny. Let's put that in the theater with those raccoons. You know.
Exactly.
I don't know. Okay, let's take a quick break. All right. Yeah, thank you for dialing into our transmission. If you agree or disagree with our views, don't keep it to yourselves. Let us know your thoughts. Sharing your feedback is essential to building a community around all of our love of movies. You can do so by sending us an email to backtotheframerate@gmail.com or finding us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or YouTube. We would also love it if you could just take a moment and please leave a solid, that means a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. We thank you all in advance. Okay, Sam, this is an important moment here. Are we going to save or purge the great outdoors?
What will happen?
What will happen? Now, like I said before, this is far from a perfect movie, but I want to see this movie again, maybe at least once a decade until the day I die. So it's not a good movie, but it's funny. It still is funny, and we need stupid comedies. This is it works still on some level, and I can't really put my finger on it. So yeah, we got to just. I know a lot of people that have not seen this film, maybe watching it the first time, will be like, "Why? It's not good." And I understand that reasoning, but if you had to be there, you had to be there. So yes,
I agree. It has to be saved for many of the similar reasons, nostalgic purposes, and like. For God's sakes, if I tried to save Ernest Goes to Camp last week and not try to save this movie, like, what would that say about me? So got to save it.
Okay.
The Great Outdoors is coming with us.
All right. Majority. Even if we had a third host today, it wouldn't have mattered. It's
indeed.
Yeah. All right. Excellent.
I'm glad that made it into the vault. That felt like it just, how could it not,
Exactly. So it's funny. We have all these like prestigious films in our vault and The Great Outdoors.
you're like hearing the music from like Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Then it pans over and it's like, ba, 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 boom.
Oh man. All right. Very cool. All right. That is our review of The Great Outdoors.
Woo.
I would love to hear what our listeners think of the film. So,
speaking of listeners, if you can hear a like venting noise in the background, that is my air conditioning, and I apologize if it is audible because it has been unbelievably humid today. Hot.
So, few things maybe we could talk about before we exit out of here. We could do our weekly highlight. Do you want to do that next?
Sure.
Okay. I'll go first. I had vague notes on this. Didn't really make much. So, Sam, know what I watched this past week?
What did you watch?
I watched all 4 Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Wow, that is amazing.
Including the latest Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F.
Wow.
I don't know where I had all that time, but
that
because
is awesome.
The new one came out, I'm like, I'm going to watch all of them in preparation for Axel F.
Would you be able to rank them? Like, could you rank them?
Totally. I didn't do it, but I could probably figure it out. But what I will say, I haven't seen any of the Beverly Hills Cop movies in quite some time. And I'll give you just like maybe a sentence about watching all of them again. The first Beverly Hills Cop by far still holds up as the best one.
Oh, for sure.
I always kind of felt like 1 and 2 were almost on the level with each other. And I still really like number 2 a lot.
I like 2. I like part 2 a lot.
And I do think it does hold up still. And the only reason why it's still a couple steps below is because it is very derivative still. But it's still really good. Number 3, I went into thinking like, well, maybe I'm going to find out that this is a misunderstood masterpiece or somehow. But no, it's not good. The problem is a lot of it is that it's got a lot of just conventional and even bad action in it. It really is that speed Con Air like bad action before they really figured out how to like put money properly into good stunt work. And it's really, they just did not know what to do with the character. I did at that point.
The only thing I do like George Lucas's cameo in The Fair.
I don't even think it's that great either. It's not even that funny.
I like it, but I know what you mean. Like there is stunt work, but it's like the directing is flat. Like him hanging off the Ferris wheel and like rescuing the kid. It's just the way it's shot. It's
slow and boring. He's jumping from carriage to carriage, and that whole sequence is like 3 minutes long. It's not even exciting because it's like I don't feel the suspense that he's gonna fall. Axel Foley is not gonna follow his death.
Well, the dumbest joke in that one for me is that like high tech weapon that he gets from Serge, where it's like the PXL, and that is so
plays music at one point.
It's like so many visual gags. Like I mean, I don't mind 3, but like visually, it is a visual step down from 2. 2 is like kinetic, Tony Scott like action, and 3 is very flat and kind of standardly shot. 3 I don't like as much.
So I was really excited to see what the 4th film, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F would bring. And it's good. I would say it's almost on the level of the second Beverly Hills Cop 2. In fact, I would say it's very much paying homage to like the late 80s, like Tony Scott-esque action style and look to it, which was very pleasing.
Oh, cool.
It has many references. It's definitely paying fan service a lot better than many like legacy sequels do, I would say. Some do just to do it for the sake of referencing, older characters. I don't really love how they treated, the cast of, especially like Judge Reinhold, and I like what they did with John Ashton, but without spoiling like the plot. But I do think that Eddie Murphy. Actually, I want to say one thing. I misunderstood what the rating of this movie was. I kept reading that this was going to be like a PG-13 film. This movie is a hard R because like it is just dropping F-bombs left and right. And it was so nice seeing Eddie Murphy just foul-mouthed and, saying, everybody just dropping F-bombs everywhere. I missed that. And I don't think Beverly Hills Cop 3 was. I think that might have been
3 was, I feel like 3 was PG. Let me check, actually.
I think it was. It feels like a 90s family action movie.
It does.
I don't remember the violence being all that hard edged. This movie, even though it wasn't super violent, it had a lot more suspense to it. It felt
Cool.
I think, Sam,
Beverly
you would
Hills
like
Cop
this.
3 is R.
It
Isn't
is
that weird?
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know that.
strange. Yeah.
It didn't
Such a
feel like
soft.
it.
It's a soft R. Yeah.
But after what I thought was an atrocity with Coming to America, like where he
I have not
did,
seen that. Yeah.
which I thought was one of the worst things ever, the sequel to Coming to America. It's hard to differentiate them. I was really skeptical about Eddie Murphy revisiting his old franchises, but I will give a recommendation to Axel F as a fun, definitely like late 80s, early 90s throwback action comedy, good jokes. Eddie Murphy looks good. He's funny. This feels like Eddie Murphy almost in his kind of prime action period. He's good. He's good. This is one of his best performances he's done in a long time.
That's awesome. Because I wanted to see it. Now I'm definitely gonna see it. And it's on Netflix, right?
It's on Netflix, yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So if I had to rank them, I would still go number 1, 2, but Axel F just right behind 2. It is like 2A and 2B. Like they feel like they are brother and sister in style and tone. And it definitely feels like,
I'm so glad to hear that.
Feels like Tony Scott's DNA is all over Axel F.
It seems like they got it right. And I will say one thing I love in Beverly Hills Cop 2 is Beverly Hills Cop obviously has the main like da 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 da, but like Beverly Hills Cop 2 has this awesome theme that's like whenever the bad guys are doing a robbery, it's basically like
Yeah.
I love that 80s music. That movie is so pumped. Like I love the editing in Beverly Hills Cop 2 because I just watched that recently, like a week ago, and I was just like entertained out of my mind. Very cool.
All right. Anything you want to mention?
I do not have much this week. I had a really good 4th of July, went to the beach, bonfire, swimming, did not really see much. I have been wanting to see A Quiet Place Day 1, have not yet made it to the theater, but hopefully I'll catch it this week.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's about it then. I don't have really anything else that I watched this week, so I think we're good.
Cool. Terrible. Oh God. Freaking raccoons, man. You were right. I never realized that is padding. It's total story padding. It's like, hey, just go get a shot of them standing around the garbage and we'll put some dialogue over it.
And no way that was shot during the 3-week shoot either.
And exactly. And it's not even
on a studio lot. Or
yeah, it's not even introduced. It just like it cuts into it, and it's like, hey, the raccoons, yay, whatever.
All right, let's put that to bed. All right, that is it. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, everyone. That is the show this week. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. We wish to thank Brian Ellsworth for our show opening. On behalf of all of us, we bid you farewell from the fallout shelter. Your presence in our underground sanctuary is truly appreciated. We are truly sorry you cannot join us, but we want to express our gratitude for your company. If you are finding solace in our discussions, we kindly ask that you please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whichever portal connects you to our broadcast. There you can find more episodes of our podcast and also on our website, backtotheframerate.com, and on Facebook, Instagram at Back to the Frame Rate. Your support is the beacon of light that brightens our confined space. Until we emerge from the fallout, stay with us, keep hope alive, and keep those reviews coming. This is the end of our transmission. Back to the Frame Rate, signing off.
Frame rate!
I want you to know it's over.